Hey guys, happy Wednesday. We have another awesome guest with us today. We are with my friend Samantha, and we are going to talk about something so important today, you guys, which is time management. And for those that are interested in questioning the drink, this is one of those areas in which we get hung up on that there's not enough time. We need to have the time to invest in ourselves. And I'm really excited to have Sam with us today. We're going to talk a few things about that. But first, let me tell you a little bit about her. She has a company called Origami Day, and she is, of course, a guru in time management. So welcome, Samantha. We're super excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't we just dive right in and start talking about some of the biggest issues that you see with somebody when we are thinking about time and the lack thereof and how to plan and how to stick to it and all that kind of stuff. So what would you like to start off with today? And then we can go from there.
So there's a lot of different things that I see with people, and one of the things that I think is the most consistent, and I dealt with this a lot before I started my business, is just this feeling of overwhelmed and overstimulated and unsure where to start. And I feel like that makes it very scary to make a change. And a lot of times, what we really need to recapture our lives, to have better work-life balance, to be more proactive, is to be in control. But when all the things are overwhelming around us, it's hard to know where to start. So honestly, I think one of the biggest struggles is that feeling of where on earth do I even begin when everything is just constantly coming at us with our phones and our emails and our life. It's just really hard to know where to dig in and make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to talk about this today because before we even started, I showed you that I have this, my traditional paper, basically, planner, and I have all good intentions, right? And then of course my phone, I use Google Calendar and I have all my appointments in my phone and I feel like I'm super organized,
Mhm.
but I don't feel like I'm organized. So maybe you can speak into that and like how we can become more organized and what that looks like and what those top tips that you do have around.
Yeah, so streamlining the tips down to just three is always hard because there's so many things we can do. And let's be real, we've spent our lives building the habits we're working under now. So it takes more than our 20-minute conversation to sort of turn that ship. But I will definitely share some of my favorite, or the ones that I see make the most impact the fastest. And I had an initial order that I wanted to share those under, but I'm going to change it up a little bit just given our conversation. And I want to start with what is not normally the first one I share, but it's the most important. And I come from a place of understanding that the harsh reality of time is that it's finite. A lot of people like to think about time as a concept, sure, but for us in our lives, time is a measuring unit. Like it is dictating how much, how many moments, how many hours, how many days we get to be on this earth. And so for me, that was a really powerful thought when I had a crazy life experience that taught me that. And so because of that, I started shifting to this place of we can't make any more time, so we need to make the most with our time. And so I found the key to that is planning. And so what I do, tip number one, this is the most important thing, make a plan every week. And so I do what I call Friday planning sessions. And so every Friday I get myself a cup of coffee, or if it's, hopefully it's in the morning, I try to do that. I turn on good music, cup of tea, something like that. And I sit down and I map out my next week. And I start with what I know is going to happen. Then I sort of fill the gaps with what I hope to happen. And then I use digital reinforcement, which we can go back into any of those if you have questions. And then what's nice is on Sunday night, instead of having paralyzing anxiety about what I'm supposed to do with the week ahead, I have this sense of peace because I've taken the time already to map out that week. And so, of course, plans change. 2020 has taught us that, but it's always better to change a plan than not have one at all. So all this to say, a great first start is to literally just sit down and make a game plan. What are you doing for the next 7 days? I strongly recommend Friday planning, but any day of the week for you to sit down and make your plan is going to help you.
Mm-hmm. I love that, doing it on a Friday versus a Sunday. Like, I feel like we're all taught to do it on Sunday, and Sunday already is such a sacred day for a lot of us. It's like we need that day of rest. We want to be checked out from all kinds of social media and the computer. We're on it all day, all the other days of the week, maybe Saturday too. I know as an entrepreneur, I pretty much work 7 days a week, like most of us, and we need that time. So I love that suggestion on Friday, is that be part of, a time block section, maybe later in the day. Or do you have a specific time that you do?
I usually like to do it a little earlier in the day, like before lunch. And for me, it's because what I like to use my Friday planning too is I sort of like to sit down and look back at the week that I'm wrapping up and use that planning block as wrap up for the week that I'm in, as well as laying the groundwork for the next week that I'm about to encounter. And so for me, I usually like to do it, best case scenario, I'm going to do it 10 o'clock in the morning is usually what I aim for. But, sometimes stuff happens and it becomes a 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But usually what I have found, talking about entrepreneur life of working all the time, I have actually managed to be done with work most Fridays by 2 or 3 o'clock. And so that's the other reason I like to do it earlier in the day, is because I've found a way to be so efficient that I usually don't work a full day on Fridays. So there's for you.
Yeah. Well, yes, because you're intentional. And I think that's another part of it too, is having the intention on what is it that you're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny, I bring that word up and I want to pause for a second, because lately I've been using intention much more than goals. And I feel like goals is a measuring device that we try to go after. But if we don't quite make the goal, then it becomes a negative thing for us as humans, right? It's this negative piece that we already feel like we're not good enough, or that we're struggling, and that we have all this other heavy stuff. So when we set an intention, it feels a little bit easier with more grace, right? Doesn't it feel that way for you?
Oh my gosh. And I honestly, what's great is for everyone watching, we did not plan this, but Carrie, that's like the perfect segue to the next thing I was going to share.
All right, do it.
So one of the other things I love about Friday planning that segues into another great tip is the beauty of Friday planning. And for me, I put my planning on a paper every week. And I'll share with you guys, I can get you a link if it helps, to a free weekly planning tool that I created. And so what's nice about that is at the end of the week, when I make my plan for the following week, I look at the week that I'm finishing and I have a visual record of accomplishments. And I take that as an opportunity to celebrate my successes. And if psychology and motivation and leadership has taught us anything, it's that when we're succeeding, we want to keep succeeding. And so having that intentional day to sit down and say, what goals or intentions have I accomplished? And where am I going to go next? That has really helped me to get a lot more done in a lot less time, because I take the time to celebrate successes. And for anyone who works for someone else, jotting down those successes in one place during your weekly planning becomes a really good log to go back to for annual review time. Or for those of us who work for ourselves, it becomes really motivating when you're like, why did I start this business?
Yes. Why did I do this again?
Yeah. So celebrating successes is really another one, because we need those successes to keep going. And so the value of having a plan, and when I say plan, by the way, I mean a written plan, is you do have that visual record of accomplishments, and we remember more when we write it down, and we accomplish more when we cross it off. So really making sure you utilize that weekly plan to celebrate your successes and ride that endorphin release to your next accomplishment.
I love that. That's exactly what I do with my coaching clients. The first thing that we talk about when we get on our weekly calls is, let's talk about your weekly wins. What happened this week? Because it sets the tone. It sets the stage for what's to come, right? Because we all have our stuff. We all have days where we have to deal with some struggles, or we're dealing with obstacles. And so when we can look at the wins and celebrate those, oh my gosh, that's what moves the needle. I love that you said that. That's really good. Yeah, awesome. So we already have some great tips. What else can you share with us?
Okay, so I've got 2 more that I want to make sure we hit. I know we said 3, but I've got a million, so we'll at least hit these 2 more. So when we're talking about that weekly planning, because really, again, that's a life changer. And for a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years, that is the single thing that's changed their lives the most, is that commitment to weekly planning. And so mini tip, if you're not, if you want to build that habit, you can use a digital calendar to set a reminder to go off every Friday to remind you to do that weekly planning. And eventually it'll be a habit that you crave. You want to do that weekly planning, but in the meantime, setting that reminder helps get it started. So with that, I really encourage people to be realistic with their plans. And Sometimes we can get really hopeful of what we might want to accomplish, but we really need to be more realistic. And so what that might look like is the average person actually only gets 3 to 5 things done on a bad day and 5 to 7 on a good day. So I usually encourage you, when you're mapping out that plan, be realistic, perhaps set 3 to-do items or tasks for that day. And then once you accomplish those, sure, add another, but that's better to do than if you set 10 and you get 3 done and you feel like a failure. Versus if we flip that around, you set 3, you get them done, and then you're like, heck yeah, I'm going on to the next thing. And with that too, building in some buffer time so you have space for plans to change, because again, 2020 has taught us anything, it's that plans change. So leaving a little wiggle room is really another thing that'll help set you up for success in that weekly planning.
Yeah, well, you're speaking right to me, because we talked about that beforehand. I said, Samantha, I can plan my day out, but stuff happens. Like something will come up and then it derails me into another direction, right? And we do this all the time, which is important for me personally, and I'm sure other people too. The moment we pick up our phone, it's like we get sucked in, right? It's like it just sucks you right in, and then you find yourself half an hour that you've been scrolling on social media when you could have been finishing that project or that task that you wanted to do. And
yes, and I'm actually going to address that in one of my tips, but before we go there, I want to share something tactical and tangible and easy that's going to help you specifically. So if you're talking about you over plan, you over commit, one of the things that I have found is really helpful is, again, go back to time as a measuring unit. Okay. It's not a concept. So we know exactly what we're working with, 1 hour, 2 hours. So it's really easy for us to sort of work with that. So if you find that you keep scheduling an 8-hour workday and it just doesn't happen, try scheduling a 6-hour workday. So decide that your work items are only going to be 6 hours worth of work. But if you still are giving yourself 8 hours worth of time to get that done, then that might help you. Now, there is a thing called Parkinson's Law where we expand to our time, but it sounds like what you might be experiencing, what a lot of people experience, is just this sort of, our eyes are bigger than our stomach in terms of our time management. So let's just knock off 2 hours. And really what that's doing is leaving 2 hours for things to go south. And it's a good 2-hour window of buffer time.
Yeah. I just want to pause real quick and let everybody know, if you have any questions or your own tips that you want to share, please put them in the comments. I can see them. And also we'll be sharing how to get in touch with Samantha if you wish to learn more about her and maybe how to work with her. So
yeah, and I love questions, because sometimes what really helps is to kind of dig into what someone's struggle is, because reality is someone else is probably having that struggle.
Yeah. So if you have anything, go ahead and put that in the comments now. And if you're watching this on the replay, you could just put #replay and then put your question, and Samantha's in the group, so she will be able to see it.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you ready for that other tip to help with those interruptions?
Yes.
So one of the things I usually like to teach people about is the Eisenhower Urgency Matrix. And that's a really great resource for people to dig into. And if you want more information on that, you can definitely, I'm happy to help you find it. But part of what that matrix shares is there's this quadrant 3 that are things that are urgent, but they're not important. And reducing that quadrant in our day-to-day is one of the best things we can do. And so one of the things that helped me more than anything, this is probably like number 2 most important tip under weekly planning, is to reduce or completely stop the push notifications that you have enabled on your phone and your computer. And a lot of people are like, no, I can't, I'm going to miss all the things. But the reality is, typically what you might miss is not urgent or important. It kind of becomes a distraction. And so if you aren't comfortable completely stopping them, then you can edit in, whether it's Outlook or Gmail or your phone settings, you can edit so that really only certain things are coming through. Because the reality is, when you have a few extra minutes, you're going to go sync your email, you're going to go scope out Instagram or Facebook. So the best thing you can do is do that on your time, not letting those distractions pull you into a time that's really not productive, or it's not something that needs to be addressed. And again, if you're fearful of missing out on things, because I know a lot of people have FOMO, schedule time in your weekly plan for social media scrolling. And what's nice is then when you know it's on your calendar for like 4 o'clock each day or a lunch break, then it becomes easier for you to not want to do it right then and there, if that makes sense. You've carved out time for it, so you have that confidence that you'll get to it. And so it's easier to say, I'm not even going to think about that because I know today during my lunch break I'm going to scroll. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. And matter of fact, I just stopped all my notifications on my iMac because what was happening, I was in the middle of something and then this notification comes up and this one comes up and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't work like this. It's too distracting. So I stopped all of those and I have to say, oh,
Yes.
so
I'm going to go ahead and put it out there that I haven't had notifications enabled on my phone for years. And not only does my world still turn, but my business still turns and people know how to get a hold of me if it's an emergency. Funny thing, phones make phone calls and people can still call you. So the only thing that makes sound on my phone ever is I have backup calendar reminders just in case. And then I have my phone call. But like if you text me, I'm not going to get a notification. If you tag me on a social media, I won't get a notification. And it's fine. It still works.
yeah, eventually you're going to see it. And that's the whole point, right? I guess there's, well, not I guess, I know that even for a lot of people say in the morning, don't touch your phone, right? It's like, matter of fact, in the National Speakers Association meeting this morning, one of the gentlemen who's hopefully watching, Chris, we talked about how he doesn't even pick up his phone until he's finished with all of his other tasks that he wants to do that's nourishing for him, whether that's time to journal or, you know, meditate or to work out or read a book or whatever it is that, you know, your daily morning routine is. Not having the phone as a distraction is so beneficial because now you're filling your cup, as I like to say. You're filling your own tank. You're starting your day with integrity and intention. And then we clear away the distraction. So I love that. Why don't we recap those again? Because I have the weekly planning, which you're suggesting on Friday. And you also talked about understanding that time is measurement.
Time is a measuring unit. Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about not urgent and what is urgent. And anybody there, what's that book? The one thing.
Oh, you froze.
I did? Oh, shoot.
The Eisenhower Matrix.
Yes, the Eisenhower Matrix. Is that also part of the One Thing book? Do you know the One Thing?
I do know the One Thing. I have a client shared it with me, but I have not read it yet.
Yes.
In my queue.
I think in the One Thing book, because I have it and it's been a while, obviously, but it talks about what is urgent. It's like having that one thing, and it's not that you just have one thing that you're working on. It's just like one thing at a time, and you're building upon that. But they do talk about the urgency, not urgent, what is less important, that sort of thing. I love that, but I didn't know it had a name, the Eisenhower
Urgency Matrix. It's also called the Time Management Matrix. Brian Tracy did a lot to popularize it.
Eat that frog.
Yes, eat that frog, exactly. And so he really talks about do the hardest thing first, which I often encourage people to do, especially if you're a morning peak productivity, but that's a whole road we can go down at some point. But yeah, the Eisenhower Matrix really helps because it helps you to realize too that there's things that you're doing that are frankly wasting your time. And if we think about, again, this concept that really drives me, which is that our time is limited and how we spend our time is how we spend our life, then I just can't get behind wasting a single second. And, you know, that's one thing that caused me about 6 months ago to question the drink was, am I losing time that is so precious and so valuable? And if I do so many other things in my life that are geared towards maximizing, why would I do something that takes away my precious time? And so I guess to me, like having a mindset shift around truly valuing our time and understanding we can always make more money, but we can never make more time. Like that just really is one of the foundational things that'll help you with time management.
Yes. And you know what? I was looking on my phone, but we do have a couple questions.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yep. Allison asks, my toughest scheduling challenge is when I'm out networking more. Obviously right now we don't have in-person events in the normal times. I often go out to an event and it breaks up my day. Oh, I so get that. Like I totally get you, girl. It is tough for me once I break out of work mode to get back into work mode. The one thing I have done is to not schedule appointments on Monday and Friday. Any additional suggestions?
So I love that. So that's a tip I give to people all the time, is don't do things on Mondays and Fridays. So you know, when I actually created the tools that became the cornerstone my business. And when I really got into this new lifestyle, I was working in a business development type role, and I was constantly out at networking events and meetings and talking to people. And that's sort of one of the things that shaped a lot of my philosophies. And no meetings on Mondays and Fridays is a cornerstone that I preach to people. So Allison, you are already crushing it by doing that. The nice thing about that is when you do that, Monday gives you this nice ramp up for your week, and Friday gives you this nice wrap up for your week. And a lot of people are perfectly content not to have a meeting on Monday or Friday. Now, Allison, what I would tell you to do sort of next level is identify if you're a morning peak productivity person, a midday peak productivity, or an evening peak productivity. And then what I would try to do is schedule those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday blocks around what tasks sort of drain your batteries and which ones recharge. So for example, I am a morning peak productivity person and I'm an extrovert. So I really, those networking things recharge me, and sitting at my computer drains me. So what I would do is I would take no meetings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the morning. And that would be my time to sit in front of my computer and do the really tough things to eat that frog, as Brian Tracy would say. Then that midday meeting or event would be fine. That would sort of be my bookend. And then after that, I would have a block of meetings. And so that would sort of help me to stay productive in a way that wasn't draining my battery, but really filling it up. So then by the end of the day, I wasn't exhausted and I could go see my husband with actual energy. So that would be something I'd encourage you guys to consider too. And I just threw a lot at you. I'm aware of that.
No, I think that is so awesome. And, she also added that she has no push notifications, especially on email. Yeah, girl. Yes. And Chris is watching. Hi, Chris. He said, I just recently adjusted to a 6-hour workday and he's accomplishing more than ever.
Oh my gosh, you guys are already rock stars.
Yes. Yeah, we got some high performers in this group. So anybody else has any other questions, please go ahead and put them in. I want to make sure I'm not missing any others.
I know, that's always a hard thing when you do these chats, is missing the questions.
I know. I don't think so. I think I got them all. It says
well, the good news is
it's so weird.
The good news is I'll continue to provide tips and run my business. So people can always reach out to me if they have any questions after our chat. Yeah. And like you said, I'm in the group, so I see things. Again, I don't engage. I have my blocks of time when I do my social media engagement, but I'm there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, if somebody was to want to find you, what is the best way to find you, Samantha? And how can somebody work with you? What is it specifically that you do when you work with somebody? What does that look like?
Yeah, I guess we completely glossed over that. So let's talk about that. So my business, which is called Origami Day, it really falls into two categories. So I offer products that I created when I started the business, and those products are a weekly planning sheet and then a planner book, which is a 14-month undated calendar and notebook in one. And I designed those intentionally so that people can start managing their time any time of year. They don't have to wait for January or an academic calendar. And they're gender neutral because I believe men need time management and not every woman wants a pink planner. And so those tools were kind of one pillar. So people can purchase those items directly from my website, which is origamiday.com, or I have a growing list of retail partners right now, mostly in the Southeast. So that's sort of one piece of it. And the other piece is after I started the business, people kept saying, can you help me? Can you help me? And I realized that what I learned and what I experienced, other people needed. So I also offer services. So those are anything from, I have monthly free events that people can participate in. I do individual consulting to help people with their personal pain points. I do webinars. When we're not in a pandemic, I go into corporations and train their teams. And then I speak at events and share sort of the story about why I started this business, which is something we haven't even touched on in this chat.
Yeah,
so
tell us.
Full scope.
Yeah. Do you want to share how you got into business?
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard the story, I used to be a workaholic, and what I like to call a high functioning train wreck. And I would get stuff done, but in my own tornadic way. And when I was 29 years old, I had a diagnosis of a chest wall deformity called pectus excavatum. It's not that uncommon, but it is usually something that's fixed when people are children. Mine was not. So at 29, the doctor said, hey, we should cut your chest open. And so I said, sure, if that's the best way to get my sternum off my heart and help me breathe, let's do it. So I planned to be out of commission for 4 weeks. And unfortunately, I had all the complications you can imagine and then some. And we don't always say I almost died. We say I definitely could have died. But all that to say, it was really a life-changing experience because it made me realize that each day is a gift and there's more to life than work. But for many of us, work is a necessity, but life is really the priority. And so that sort of got me into how do you really find work-life balance? How do you make work-life balance part of your life? And that's really what caused me to create Origami Day. And I'll just end with this. People ask, why Origami Day? What is that name? And the first tool that helped me really save my life is a folding piece of paper. And my family is from Japan. And so it's sort of a way to respect the ancestors since Origami Day. Origami is the word for folding paper. So that's a little of my story.
Gosh, that is so beautiful. I knew about your medical portion of the story, but I didn't know about the business name. That is really cool.
Yeah. So it fell into place. I think it's sort of God's plan for me.
Isn't that the case, right? For most people, it's like we take, like even my story, right? Like I have this, kind of, it's not totally unusual. My story is a lot like other people's story, but taking all that mess that we had or a difficulty or the pain or whatever, and just turning it into something positive so we can help other people. It's like, it's just so great. I feel like it's designed that way. It's a perfect setup for us to be able to share our gifts, and we're here to be able to help one another. So I love that. Thank you so much for being a part of this group. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge. I know it's going to help a lot of people. I know it helped me. I took a bunch of notes. I would love for you to put in the comments when we're done, if you want to put the link to something you said. It was a link for the planner that you recommended.
Maybe I can do. Yeah, I'll put a link for the weekly planning sheet.
Yeah, for the planning sheet, and then to your website. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll put this on YouTube for others to find us. And as soon as I hit end, Samantha, it'll end our meeting and our conversation. So just let you know, you're like, where'd she go? It just ends. But anyways, thank you again for being a part of this group and being with us today. You're awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing, because as someone, again, like I said, who's questioned the drink, like I was thrilled when I learned about what you're doing. So I'm so excited for this community, and I hope everyone enjoyed our time today. And I look forward to connecting with more people on that Facebook group, but not with notifications.
Yeah. You draw the line on the notifications. I love it. Yeah. I love that. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week live here again, same time, same place. Next week is Mary Davis, and she is an organizer. Oh my gosh, wait to hear a little bit about her story. So thanks again. We'll see you soon. Bye, Samantha.
Bye.
Bye.